Ladies and gentlemen, good day and welcome to Greenlam Industries Limited Q3 FY22 earnings conference call. This conference call may contain forward-looking statements about the company which are based on beliefs, opinions and expectations of the company as on the date of this call. These statements are not the guarantees of future performance and involve risks and uncertainties that are difficult to predict. As a reminder, all participant lines will be in the listen-only mode, and there will be an opportunity for you to ask questions after the presentation concludes. Should you need assistance during the conference call, please signal an operator by pressing star then 0 on your touch-tone phone. Please note that this conference is being recorded. I now hand the conference over to Mr. Saurabh Mittal, Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer, Greenlam Industries Limited. Thank you, and over to you, sir.
Thank you. Good afternoon, friends, and a very warm welcome to all of you. I hope you all have been safe and healthy through the third wave. I'm joined in the call by Ashok, our CFO, Samarth from the finance team, and SGA, our investor relations advisor. The results and presentations are available in the stock exchanges, and I hope you've had a chance to review the results. So as far as the business is concerned, I'll just focus on what happened in the last quarter. The business grew in terms of revenues by about 34% year on year, and they were nearly flattish sequentially versus Q2 of this financial year. We had a disruption at the Behror factory at the Rajasthan plant, where we were temporarily closed 100% for about 6 to 7 days. And then we have restricted working days as per the guideline of the CAQM. This resulted in production and sales loss of approximately 40 to 50 crores in Q3, which in turn obviously kept raw materials at an elevated level because we could convert them to sales, and also impacted profitability. Most of our costs were by and large fixed in this period while the factory was not operating at the necessary capacity. The restriction continued in the month of January. So in January, we had about 8 fewer working days as far as Behror factory is concerned. And with effect from 4th of February, the restrictions have been removed and we've been allowed to run the plant 7 days a week. On the price hikes, because this has been an important discussion in the past also, as we talk now, we've been able to pass on all the raw material cost increase to the customers in both domestic and export markets and in the wood and veneer business. The increase has been impacted through Q3. So most of the domestic increase became effective 1st November, and export increases have happened through the quarter. But as we talk right now, all raw material the cost increase have been passed on. Currently, raw material costs by and large remain in a certain range, with few costs coming down and few still, increasing. But by and large, it's moving within a range. So that's on the raw material cost front. International logistics, both inwards and outward, continues to remain difficult. Availability of containers, sailing time, shipment, vessels availability, costs on the sea freight still remain challenging, and not much has improved on that front. Impact of Omicron, the third wave, has been marginal to the business. In last quarter, we also announced our expansion capex plans and entry into adjacent spaces of plywoods and particle boards. And I hope you all have had a chance to see the presentation on the next topic. The plans on the new plants are moving more or less as per schedule, and work has commenced at the Andhra plant. Necessary approvals have by and large come in, and we're moving in a certain speed, with as far as Andhra Pradesh and Tamil Nadu plants are concerned. So this is by and large from my side, and I'll be happy to answer your questions post Ashok completes his presentation. Ashok, over to you.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, friends. I'll take you through the financial performance. For the Q3 FY22 on a Concall basis, net revenue for the quarter grew by 34% on year-on-year basis. However, it degrew by 1% on sequential basis and stood at 450 crore in this quarter as compared to 335 crore in Q3 last year. Sequential degrowth in revenue is due to disruption at our Behror plant, just now explained by boss. Gross margin was down by 780 basis points to 44.3% in Q3 FY22 from 52.1% in Q3 FY21, primarily due to rising raw material cost. On a sequential basis, gross margin was up by 80 basis points. Gross margin in absolute terms grew by 14% to 199 crore as compared to 174 crore in Q3 last year. EBITDA margin was down by 540 basis points and stood at 11.9% in Q3 this year as compared to 17.3% in Q3 last year. On a sequential basis, EBITDA margin was up by 180 basis points. EBITDA in absolute terms degrew by around 8% to 53.4 crore in Q3 this year as compared to 57.9 crore in Q3 last year. Net profit for the quarter stood at 26.9 crore in Q3 this year as compared to 32 crore in Q3 last year. Moving on to 9 months of performance, consolidated net revenue for the 9-month period ending 31st December grew by 58% and stood at 1,240 crore as compared to 784 crore in the 9-month previous year. Gross margin was down by 590 basis points to 44.5% this year from 50.4% last year, primarily due to rising raw material cost. Gross margin in absolute terms grew by 39% to 551 crore in this year as compared to 395 crore in 9 months last year. EBITDA margin was down by 240 basis points to 11.1% in this year from 13.5% last year. EBITDA in absolute terms grew by 29% to 137.5 crore in 9 months this year to 106 crore in 9 months last year. Net profit grew by 51.7% to 64.9 crore in 9 months this year as against 42.8 crore 9 months last year. Moving on to segmental performance, laminate business grew by 38% on year-on-year basis and degrew by 1.6% sequentially to 408 crore from 295 crore in Q3 last year. Volume growth stood at 1.7% on year-on-year basis. Domestic laminate revenue grew by 52.5% on year-on-year basis and grew by 1.3% sequentially in value terms. Volume growth stood at 19.2% on year-on-year basis. Moving on to international laminate revenue, which grew by 26% on year-on-year basis and degrew by 4% on sequentially basis in value terms. Our volume degrew by 13% on year-on-year basis. EBITDA margin stood at 13.3%, a degrowth of 650 basis points on year-on-year and a degrowth of 180 basis points on Q-on-Q basis. The production this is a growth of 180 basis points. The production volume were at 3.88 million sheets and utilization level of 99%. Sales volume for the quarter stood at 3.98 million sheets. Our average realization for the quarter was at 984 per sheet. For the 9 months, Laminate revenue grew by 61.8% on year-on-year basis to 1,132 crore from 700 crore in 9 months previous year. Volume growth stood at 41% on year-on-year basis. Domestic laminate revenue grew by 74.7% in value terms on year-on-year basis. Volume growth stood at 56.4% on year-on-year basis. International laminate revenue grew by 52.4% in value terms on year-on-year basis. Volume growth stood at on year-on-year basis. EBITDA margin stood at 12.6%, a degrowth of 350 basis points. Production volume were at 12.63 million sheets and utilization level were at 108%. Sales volume for the 9 months stood at 12.59 million sheets and average realization for 9-month period was 862 per sheet. Moving on to decorative veneer and allied segment, which consists of decorative wood veneer, engineered floors and engineered doors. In the decorative veneer segment, revenue degrew by 5.3% on year-on-year basis and degrew by 3.1% on sequential basis to 24.4 crore from 25.7 crore in Q3 last year. Volume degrew by 17.2% on year-on-year basis. Revenue of decorative veneer business grew by 32% to 61.7 crore in 9 months from 46.7 crore in 9 months last year. Volume growth stood at 27.3% on year-on-year basis. Volume degrew by 17% in Q3 on YOY basis and volume grew by 27% in 9 months. Sales volume for the quarter 3 stood at 0.3 million square meter. However, sales volume for the 9 months were at 0.83 million square meter. Capacity utilization for the quarter were at 29% and for the 9 months it is 26%. Average realization for this quarter was 808 rupees per square meter. For 9 months it stood at 736 rupees per square meter. Moving on to engineered wood flooring, revenue grew by around 28% on year-on-year basis and grew by 34% on sequential basis to 10.8 crore in this quarter as against 8.4 crore in Q3 FY21. Revenue for the engineered wood flooring business grew by 25% on and stood at 26 crore in 9 months as against 21 crore in 9 months last year. However, capacity utilization were at 11% in this quarter and 10% for the 9 months. Moving on to engineered doors, revenue for the engineered doors business grew by 33% for this quarter on year-on-year basis and grew by 2.4% on sequential basis and stood at 6.5 crore as against 4.9 crore in Q3 last year. Revenue for the engineered door business grew by 17% in this 9 months and stood at 19.8 crore as against 17 crore in 9 months last year. Capacity utilization for Q3 were at 19% and for the 9 months stood at 20%. Moving on to debt. Net debt for the quarter ended 31st December stood at 178.5 crore as against 179.5 crore last year. Net working capital days for Q3 stood at 76 crore as against 83 days in Q3 last year. That's all from my side. I would now like to open the floor for question and answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now begin with the question and answer session. Anyone wishing to ask a question may you please press star and one on your touchtone telephone. If you wish to remove yourself from the question queue, you may press star and two. Participants are requested to use handsets while asking a question. Ladies and gentlemen, we will wait for a moment while the question queue assembles. The first question is from the line of Udit from Yes Securities. Please go ahead.
Yes. Hi, sir. Thank you for taking up my question. So the first question is that can you comment on the demand? How is it panning out post January? Because we have seen that the prices of minutes have been surging and they are almost at record highs. So does it hamper the demand, and what is the outlook going forward?
So I'll take a question. So demand side, by and large, is looking good actually. And in the month of Jan also, we had more of a supply side restriction. So demand side is fine. And the record high laminate realization is a function of price hikes and a continued focus on premiumizing the products and doing more value-added sales. So it's a combination of both, right? Which we think as we move ahead will still improve a bit. So that's on the demand side. Yeah. And what was your second question, please?
Yeah, and so secondly, can you explain that in the international market, are we able to pass on, like you mentioned, that we are able to pass on the rise in raw material costs? But what about the freight cost? Are we passing it on completely, or we are absorbing some?
Your voice is echoing. Can you go again, please? Can you go again, please?
Yeah, is it good now?
Yes, better now. Yes, better.
Yeah. So the question pertains to the international prices. So with there also, are we able to pass on the complete incremental cost related to freight as well?
Yes. So by and large, internationally too. So freight we passed on actually from January 21, all the additional freight, right? So internationally also, with the increases we've done over Q3, various markets have happened in different months. By and large, we've passed on all the RM cost increase and the incremental freight to the customers in the market.
Got it. Thank you, sir. I'll come back in the line for the question.
Thank you.
Thank you. A reminder to the participants, anyone wishing to ask a question, may please press star and one. The next question is from the line of Achal Lohade from JM Financial. Please go ahead.
Yeah, good evening. Thank you for the opportunity. My first question was with respect to realization. If I hear correctly, the revenue for international laminates grew by 26%, while volumes declined 13% YY. That means the realizations have gone up fairly significantly. So is it possible to break this in terms of the freight and X of freight? What is the change?
So I think I'll take part of the question and I'll have Ashok take the other part. So exports volume reduction is also a function of loss of production at the Behror factory, right? Because we had disruption and plant operated at literally, I think, below 50% in the month of December.
Sorry to interrupt, sir. Sir, your voice is sounding a little muffled.
I'm so sorry. I don't know what to do now. Is that better? A little
better, sir. Please proceed. Thank you.
So the volume reduction is a function of lower production at the factory. And also, we have shipments in transit, which because of the shipment delays, vessel delays, arrival delays at the seaport, the volume reduction is visible. As far as the price reduction is concerned, it's a function of value mix and price increases. And Ashok, are you there? So
yes, sir.
If you can take the second part of the question on the freight part, please.
Yeah, actually the freight part is not considered in this. So whatever, as we have any incremental freight that has been collected from the customer on their behalf, so that is not considered in this.
So you're saying that realization does not include. So this is like FOB sales,
No. This what we have done, as mentioned by sir. from January 2020, whatever incremental freight.
Actually 21. Actually January 21.
Yes, sir. January 21. Whatever incremental freight that was recovered by from the customer. So this keeps on varying depending upon what the freight for that shipment. So that has been recovered, and that has been adjusted with the additional freight paid by the company. So that's not considered in this. The normal freight which was applicable prior to this, prior to the freight hikes or problem in the freight goes up, that is only considered. So it's a CIF in most of the cases, but additional freight is recovered from the customer and not considered in the sales.
So you were saying it's not passed. Yeah, sorry. Please go ahead. Yeah.
So the price realization you're seeing is not inclusive of the additional freight, right? So the prices basis price closure, freight closure on December 20, right? So the incremental freight is not forming part of the improved realization. I think that's what you are asking.
Yeah. So is there a freight account or something where it gets adjusted, so with the collection and the incremental freight? Would that have an impact on the margins? Because the recovery and the payment would be with a lag, right?
So that's already accounted in the P&L. So expense which you're seeing is already that's already accounted in the books.
Okay, I'll probably take it offline. It's a little confusing, so I'll take it offline. The second question I had, Saurabhji, if you could talk a little bit about, from the exports perspective or international markets perspective, what are the top 3-4 countries for us, and where are we in those respective countries among top 3, 4, or top layer, and how do we plan to scale up there? If you could talk a little bit more on that, that would be of great help. Thank you.
So the export business, looks to be in decent shape, and like I said earlier, currently it's more of a supply side challenge, and the disruption at the factory Beirut impacted export revenues as well as some part of domestic revenues. And I said this earlier too, in most of the export markets, we are not number 1, number 2 in those local markets. We might be number 1 from India, but otherwise, depending on which region, which market, we talk about. So we believe there is good headroom available for us to improve volume, improve value mix, improve price realization in most of the export markets we're present in. So top 3, Thailand, Egypt, UAE, UK, US, 3, 5. I think these will be the top markets for us right now.
Understood. And just last question, if I may, with respect to the margins, if you could give some sense, assuming a normalized scenario in terms of RM cost of freight, what kind of margins we are looking at from next 2-3 year perspective, given the product mix what we would have, and the volume growth in a normal scenario. I know, or you can talk about in a normal scenario what usually is the volume growth in the domestic and the export market.
So tough to give you a sense of next 2-3 years, because next 2-3 years the new plants will also come into production, Achal. What I can say is that if you see Q3, our volumes, our revenues, and our margins could all have been better if the disruption was not there, and price increases was implemented through the quarter. So we didn't have a full quarter with the price increase, which hopefully we will have in Q4. Not hopefully, we will have in Q4. So, as far as volumes are concerned, until the new capacities, come in, which probably is like Q4 or FY23, we're talking more minutes right now. The plants are nearly running at full capacity, despite other than the disruption we've had in December and partially in January.
Right. I mean, I was more asking from 2-3 year perspective. What kind of growth one would be okay to look at. Would that be high single digit, double digit in terms of volume growth and the margins?
So no, that's what I'm trying to say. So when you take a 2-3 year view, FY23, we will have the new capacity of laminates, if things go well, in the Q4 of FY23, right? In FY24, we will have the new capacity for the full year. So I think this will depend on how the capacities, come up. And we believe when the new capacity comes up, I think we've targeted in about 3 odd years, we should come to near full capacity. I'll have to run the math, but as we see things now, we think the ability to grow the business to sell, is quite decent for us, and we've seen it in many markets, both domestically and internationally. So this is what I can say right now.
Got it. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you. A reminder to the participants, anyone wishing to ask a question, may please press star and 1. The next question is on the line of Vijay Karpe from Bryanston Investments. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for giving this opportunity. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
So my first question is, I just wanted to understand what is the management's view of the demand-supply dynamics in the medium term, because there has been a lot of announcements on the expansion side across the board in plywood, MDF, particle board, laminate. So there are a lot of capacities which are coming up by the end of financial year 24. So what is your view on this?
So our response would be, so we are adding capacities in laminates, and currently Q3 was an aberration because of the disruption of the plant. We're already operating 115% utilization, so we clearly need more capacity. And the capacities we are bringing are in 3 different sizes. So we don't see much challenges there, and we need more capacities. The next capacity we're bringing is particle boards and not MDF. If you look at particle boards, there are 2 meaningful capacities coming up. One is ours, and one is another competitor of ours who's coming up in the state of Gujarat. Right? So really, from a market size, opportunity in terms of quantity of the market, imports not coming in, most of the other local players being upscale, poor quality of boards. There's a significant supply-demand gap in particle boards, and we think with our understanding of the business and its close correlation between laminates and compact laminate, we should be good with that. And if you look up the company site, we'll have the next orbit presentation where all of this is detailed out, but you can also get in touch with our team offline. On the plywoods, we said that the market size is somewhere in the band of 30,000 crores, and the capacity we're bringing in is again not so high, and we've explained the rationale why we've chosen South India as the location. South India is the largest branded market for plywood, and there is no meaningful branded capacity in South India. So really from that point, we don't see much challenges on that capacity. The significant capacity addition which is happening is actually in the MDF business and not the businesses we are in right now or we are intending to get into.
So will not particle board also indirectly compete with MDF?
Yeah, so well, particle board, some products, some usages are replaceable. So let's put it this way. We believe that because there are no quality particle boards available right now, customers have to buy MDF, right? And the quantity of particle board market or potential market at the moment we see is larger than the MDF, and there is no quality producer of particle board in the market. While in MDF you have 4 or 5 companies or 3 or 4 companies who are of a certain size and scale. Yeah, and particle board business is largely sold as pre-laminated boards and not as bare boards, and it is very much aligned to the decorative laminate business we are in, as most OEM customers, most commercial market customers buy laminates and particle boards both, right? Pre-lam particle board. So yes, to answer your question, they are replaceable for certain application and for certain they are not.
Got it. And can you state the plywood capacity which is 18.9 million square meter in terms of CBM?
I don't have the math with me right now. Ashwini, would you have the math, Ashwini?
Yeah, you need to divide it by 250. So this is a simple mathematics. This is based on 4 mm basis.
Okay, so divided by 260.
Yeah.
Okay. And my next question is, will not our plywood capacity compete with the organized players, because ours is a premium plywood capacity that we'll be putting, and additionally, will our particle board plant also receive the lower tax benefits, because in the budget that now has been pushed up to end of March 24?
Yes,
To respond. No,
yes,
the response
yes,
is,
on that also it will be available.
so the tax benefit will be available on the particle project, and plywood will compete, yes, will be more mid to premium. Will it compete with the branded players or not? We believe that there is a space for, a branded player, another branded player in the plywood segment, because of the, formalization happening in that category. And all the plywood we produce will be, calibrated plywood, the most superior plywood, which today the branded players have an option of calibrated plywood. Our entire production will be calibrated, and we believe the quality will be, best in class, and we will be able to hopefully set up our network and our demand side pretty well.
Thank you so much, and best of luck.
Thank you.
Thank you. Question is in the line of Adesh Mehta from Motilal Oswal AMC. Please go ahead.
Hello, sir. Thanks for the opportunity.
Hi.
Sir, I wanted to understand that now that we are getting into plywood, and we have other also similar named companies in the same segment, how would we be differentiating in terms of our branding and marketing? Any thoughts on that, sir, would be very useful.
So, well, our idea of a brand, so we will be creating, potentially a new brand for plywood, which will come from Greenlam Industries. We will not use the word green in the plywood brand, and we're just kind of working on the final marketing strategy and the sales strategy. And the number of dealers in the plywood market, the counters, the spread is so high with just 2 national brands. So really, I don't think we'll end up competing, with the 2 national brands or with the company with a, with a similar, corporate brand name. So we don't believe that'll be an issue. Every town, every city has multiple, counters and dealers, and with just 2 national brands and few regional brands servicing them. So we believe, without head-on competition, we'll be able to find a space. We already ship through directly and through sub-distribution from our distributors to most of the, district-level towns, taluka, tehsil towns, our laminate products. So our reach of our products directly or through distributors is already there in the market. And so really, I think from that point, we don't see a significant challenge on that front. Some cannibalization or challenges might come, but we think on the overall scheme of things, it will not be a big problem.
Right, sir. And if I may ask, how many of our, domestic distributors in terms of laminates, we can also cross-sell, plywood?
So laminate model is a company distributor dealer model, because number of SKUs are very high. The need to carry inventory across the entire catalog is high. So laminate follows more of a distribution-based model. There's a large distributor, number of smaller sub-dealers or medium-sized dealers. The plywood model is more of a company to a direct dealer format. So actually all of the sub-dealers of our laminate products which are buying from distributors are potentially plywood dealers also, or carry plywood already. Yeah.
Right. Got it, sir. Wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next question. That is in the line of Rishabh Bothra from Anand Rathi. Please go ahead. Rishabh, your line is in the talk mode. Please go ahead. As there's no response from the current participant, we'll move on to the next. That is on the line of Akshay Cheda from Canara Robeco. Please go ahead.
Yeah, sir. So thank you for the opportunity. So 2 questions from my side. So just wanted to understand what is the maximum capacity utilization that we can go from our existing capacity in laminates of around 15.62 million sheets. I mean, the reason I'm asking is that in spite of the challenges that we had in our Rajasthan factory, still we were operating at around 99%. So what max we can go there? That was my first question. And secondly, sir, you did talk about that the new laminates factory that you're talking, so that you expect to ramp it up to full capacity in 3 years. So if you can talk on the similar lines for the plywood also, like since it will be starting its production in FY24, so by what time you look to ramp it up to the full capacity? Yeah, so these are the 2 questions. Thank you.
Ashwini, will you take it? Ashwini?
Yeah. So for the laminate existing capacity, previously also we have taken this up to 115-118%, depending upon the product mix and all this. We believe that very briefly it can go up to that level also. And in terms of new third laminate plant, it is in the 3rd year we are expecting the 100% capacity utilization. And in terms of the next question on plywood, so the expected commercial production for that is Q4 of FY23, not FY24. Q4 of FY24 is for the particle board plant. For the plywood also, we are expecting 100% utilization in the 3rd year of operation.
Okay, got it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Rishabh Bothra from Anand Rathi. Please go ahead.
Sir, what I was trying to ask is, what sort of plans do we have to enhance the utilization level in doors and flooring as well as the veneer segment? Or are we having excess capacity ahead of time? If you could throw some light.
So I will take that. So if you go one by one, in the veneer factory, obviously 100% of that kind of utilizations don't work, and we have not excess, but that's a bare minimum of kind of a capacity you have to put in. So we are not expecting anything beyond like a 45-50% kind of utilization in that business model. Flooring and doors, again, the ramp up is happening, right? And because of fluctuation of demand with disturbance, I think it's not happened the way we would have loved it to happen. But from a utilization level, clearly flooring and door can go up, and the plan there will be to consistently keep increasing the utilization, which can happen, in that business model of flooring and door. So yeah, that's my answer to it.
So continuing with the same question, please forgive me for my ignorance. Does this industry also work on outsourcing model? Can we outsource the capacity to someone else? Are we to enhance the profitability?
Of flooring, are we talking veneers or any?
I mean, anywhere if there is the outsourcing model which is under play, and if we can outsource the capacity, idle capacity to someone else. And outsource in the sense, the third party will outsource from us.
So I think that model in our country, or even elsewhere, in this business model is very difficult to create, because 100% raw material in the wood veneer section, which is decorative veneer, flooring and doors, gets imported, right? And there's a product range which you have to create in terms of the sizes, dimensions, stains, kind of finishes and all that. So if you end up, number one, there is no such requirement of potential customer or potential company which can take that kind of capacity or even go and market it, because at the end to create a brand, set up a distribution, it's quite a challenge. So I don't see that, that we can let out our capacity to somebody else because of the complexity of range, raw material investment, marketing, product differentiation. So that's my feedback.
And in terms of market, is it more to domestic or overseas?
Yeah, decorative veneer is 100% domestic by and large. Flooring also, eventually it's nearly like a 75-80% domestic market. Doors we do some export, but again 70-75% domestic. So the wood veneer business will largely be a domestic play because all the raw material is imported, and when you ship, the freight's significantly high, and we until now haven't been able to create a brand in that category. So by and large, the attention in terms of sales marketing effort will be in the domestic market for these categories.
And lastly, I'll come back in the queue. Is there a proposal to merge the subsidiary under which expansion program is going on, or what was the need to do expansion in that particular subsidiary? I mean, who are the other owners of the entity?
So there are two subsidiaries. The HG Industries, if you are talking, in terms of the company owns nearly 75% of the equity, and the rest is owned by the general public. And this has been acquired since the land is there in that company, so that's why it has been acquired. In terms of merging it with Greenlam or any other company, as of now there is no such discussion or decision has been taken.
But to avoid
another subsidiary in terms of GSL that has been taken because the new expansion is done in that, and to take advantage of tax benefit which was announced by Government of India for newer company.
But I think, sir, cost-wise, merger would be a better rationale. So both the companies operate under one umbrella, and cost could be synergy could be availed.
Sure.
I'll come back in the queue.
Taking the feedback. Thanks.
I'll come back in the queue. Thanks.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next question. That is from the line of Alisha Mahawla from Envision Capital. Please go ahead.
Hi, sir. Good evening, and thank you for taking my question. So just wanted to understand if you can share with us what is your market share currently in the domestic market in the laminate space?
Ashwini will take the math. Ashwini?
This is around 12-13% as of now.
Okay. And because of the capacity limitation that we have over the next few quarters, and some competitors probably I'm sure have surplus capacity, is there fear that we may start losing market share going forward till new capacity comes on stream?
No, I believe the new capacity is already announced and it has got delayed because of pandemic situation. And we are hopeful that this capacity will be available by Q4 of FY23. And till such time, we are as of now at near around 100% capacity, 105, around 8-10% capacity still can be used from the existing plant.
Okay, sure. And just one last question: the capex of about 950 crores that we announced. When you did the capex call, you said that it is still under discussion. Just want to clarify the debt and equity ratio, if you can share.
Yeah, it will be debt to equity ratio will be 65% will be from debt and remaining from the internal accrual and equity. You are talking about for this project or for the entire company as a whole?
For the project, for the 950 crore capex that we're
talking about. Yeah, it is 65% debt and 35% from the internal accrual and equity.
Sure. And just one last question. Our run rate in our non-laminates business has been sort of flat. Any steps that we're taking to improve the utilization or the run rate in this business?
So sure, steps in terms of focusing more on adding more channel partners, working with architects. ID is more like a routine operations which we anyway do. What you need to appreciate is that these three categories or these three products are largely residential market driven, and with the residential market turning around, and we believe that demand for veneer flooring doors in the home market will improve, and as we go ahead, you'll see better revenues. And I must say this again, I might be repetitive, but in Q3, because of the better factors disruption, the veneer business had an impact in terms of revenue, not the flooring door, because we had surplus capacity there. So as we move ahead, I think we'll see improvements, in terms of run rate of this category also.
Sure. And just one last question, if I may. While we understand that currently margins in the laminates business are impacted because of increase in raw material price, etc., by when can we revert back to the 15% of margins that we used to speak of in this segment?
So in Q3, I think we were at 13.3%, right?
Yes.
And assuming we lost 35-40 crores of sales of laminates in Q3, and if you run the math, we'll probably be very close to that number, I think. Yeah.
So hopefully from next quarter, the exit margins could be closer to that range or that number.
Well, yes, if you run the math of Q3, if you add 40 crores on top line, and with hardly any incremental costs, it will be very similar to that number, yeah. It could be.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Dhiral from Phillip Capital. Please go ahead.
Yeah, good afternoon, sir, and thanks for the opportunity. Sir, since we are expanding into newer verticals like plywood and particle boards, but sir, regarding our existing verticals, regarding veneer, floors and doors, so where do you see this vertical, maybe in 3 years down the line in terms of performance?
So 3 years down the line, like you're talking the plywood business or the flooring and door business?
No, the existing vertical, which is veneer and floors and doors.
Yeah, so right now we have two verticals, the laminates and the decorative veneer and allied. In decorative veneer and allied, we have three businesses, the veneer panel, the engineered wood flooring, and the engineered door business. So 3 years down the line, this business will keep going on, right? So it doesn't, the plywood business is not impacting the decorative veneer and allied category or business in terms of resources or marketing or sales efforts. So this business, this vertical, doesn't need any more capital in terms of capex or working capital, and we hope that we keep improving this business as we move ahead.
So any revenue run rate in our mind to achieve in next maybe 2 to 3 years in these three segments?
Difficult to give you a number, but clearly what we are doing now, we have adequate capacity across the three businesses, and these are largely residential-oriented markets. And with the residential market doing well, we think we should be able to improve the numbers, in all the three products and under the umbrella of decorative veneer and allied category.
Okay. And sir, is our business has any lever for margin improvement, after entering into this new vertical?
Well, when you say lever, as in, I think those businesses have their own margin profile and margin potential, and it will depend on how we sell, market, and run the business, properly and correctly. I think, and as we as a company gain size and scale, we believe fixed costs, fixed overheads will, as a percentage, will reduce, and hopefully that should improve margin profile as we move ahead.
So what kind of margins are we looking in plywood and particle boards particularly?
Sujit, can you give the numbers, please?
So in the particle board, in the plywood, we are expecting a margin of in the range of around 12-13%, and in terms of particle board, it's in the range of around 25%.
Okay. And so what kind of ROE, ROCs we are looking in this new capex?
I think it will all depend upon how soon we able to ramp up the utilization level.
But typically, plywood business, like if you look at the laminate business right now, you probably have a ROC in the band of pre-tax 25-30%. So plywood typically is in the band of 20-25%, and particle board is also probably in a similar 18-20%. But obviously, it depends on like Ashok rightly mentioned, ability to ramp up value mix, operationally well-run plants, well-run sales marketing mix.
Okay. And so lastly, is there any further room of improvement in our net working capital days?
Further?
Room for improvement in our net working capital days, which is, I believe, right now around 76 days.
Yeah, for the current business, there is room because, like I said earlier, we lost sales and we couldn't convert raw material to sales, which have led to elevated inventory levels, and also due to the international supply chain logistics challenges, both inward and outward. That's also a little bit increasing our inventory levels, both inward and outward. So I think if that normalizes, there is potential to further improve net working capital days.
Any ballpark figure that we are targeting, maybe let's say next 1 to 2 years?
No, I can't give you a figure on that, please.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Nikhil Agarwal from VT Capital. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Good evening, sir. Thank you for the opportunity. So you said that like in the new capacities that are coming up, they will achieve full capacity utilization in the third year. So that was for particle board and laminates. Is that the same for that was for laminates and plywood? Is that the same for particle board as well?
Yeah. In the particle board, we are expecting this 100% utilization in the 4th year of operation.
In the 4th. Okay, sir. And so, like your major raw material is phenol and melamine. So, could you just give some update on the prices? What was it at the end of Q2, and what was it at the end of QC, and what is the current trend now?
So, I believe you are talking in terms of for the raw material for laminates. So, in the laminate,
yes.
We have paper and chemical both. In the chemical, what you said is the phenol and melamine. Phenol and melamine is the prime material in terms of that. And as we said that the prices of this were on a higher side in the Q3, but towards end of Q3 that was started softening. So if I say only about the Q3, the price of melamine was around 30-35% higher in comparison to Q2, and for phenol it was higher by around 5 to 10%.
In Q3 the prices were higher, but they started softening by the end. Is my understanding correct?
Your voice is not clear. Can you tell again?
Hello.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm audible now.
Yes, please.
Yes. So you said that in Q3 your prices were higher by 35% compared to Q2, but at the end it started softening.
Yes.
Is my understanding? Oh, okay, sir. And so I think I missed this out at the beginning. So could you just tell me what the export realization and revenue were for the quarter?
So export realization for this quarter was 1,028, and overall revenue for export for company as a whole was 207 crore.
Okay, but you just export your laminates, the decorative veneer segment, that is for the domestic market.
Yeah, but floors and doors also, some amount of exports are happening from that, but primarily the exports. Primarily the laminates are exported.
Okay, so basically 50% of your laminates revenue comes from exports, I'm assuming.
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay, and so just one last question, if you may allow.
Interrupt, Mr. Agarwal.
Hello.
We request that you return to the question queue. There are participants waiting for the
Okay, okay.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next question. That is on the line of Karthik Mediratha from Nivshai. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Hello, sir. Congratulations on the great set of numbers. So my first question was regarding your raw material cost. You had mentioned that they are softening from Q3 end. So do you think these will be passed on to the customers and that would bring down our realizations going forward?
So my answer was the specific to the two raw material which he has mentioned. The previous person was mentioned. It was in terms of phenol and melamine. So what has happened? Some of the raw material constituents cost has come down, whereas some has increased. So let's say in case of paper, the design paper and to some extent craft paper prices also has gone. So we believe that there will not be much of a difference which need to be passed on into the market. And situation is again volatile. So we need to see the clear trend to emerge before taking any call in terms of passing on to the market.
Okay, understood. And sir, one more question. In the last year, Q3 FY21, in laminates, we had done an EBITDA margin of around 19.8%. So are these margins achievable again in future?
Difficult to say, but that was a very sweet spot that time, wherein the raw material prices were crashed before just that, and we had a very favorable raw material prices in that quarter. But difficult to comment whether that 19.8% is achievable in the current scenario, even though it looks difficult in terms of achieving 20% margin.
Understood. And sir, just one last question. You had mentioned that one of the competitors is entering into particle board with a plant in Gujarat. So any idea on the capacity and amount of capex of that competitor?
I think it will be very similar to what we are doing in terms of capacity and capex, my guess is.
Okay. Thank you, sir, and all the best for the future quarter.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Ronald Sioni from Sharekhan. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Good evening, sir. Thank you for the opportunity. I had only one question with respect to demand outlook. Now, most of the players in building material are going up in expansion mode. So your assessment demand, what brings so much confidence to see almost about 6 to 7 years of downright growth going ahead for the wood panel industry? Is it the slew of launches over the trailing 1 year in the residential segment? Is it demand driven from the aftermarket or secondary markets, or are there some kind of leading indicators in terms of cement capacity expansions, or which parameters or indicators you are looking at to aggressively go ahead with the expansion plan? Okay, that is from me.
So yes, I'll take it. So I think your question is more general and not particularly about a product we are in right now. So if you look at our business model, and I would like to answer this one by one. If you look at the core business, which is laminates, we are already at a certain capacity utilization. We have two market segments, the international market and the domestic market. And like we said earlier, in the international market right now, we're facing supply side constraints. But we have opened several markets, we've seeded several markets over the last 15 odd years. And in most of the markets we're operating in, we are still not number one, number two. And internationally, capacities are not coming up. We've been able to create a good distribution setup in most markets with our own brand, with our own people, with good demand creation. Obviously, this is WIP, it never ends. So we think we have decent space, to expand our international business as far as laminates is concerned. And with the capacity we are bringing on board, it is not so much. It is actually 3 production lines, and we have right now about 11 lines. And then on the domestic side, one is the demand generally going up in the residential side and commercial side. Then there is the situation of unorganized segment moving to organized segment. The unorganized segment is only surviving, as we all know, due to inferior product quality, inferior commercial practices, and with regulatory tightening up, most of these factories, companies are becoming subscale, and they're gradually getting marginalized. So we think one is the demand situation in the domestic side, other is the movement from unorganized to organized. Even internationally, it has happened. 30, 40 laminate factories have become 2 or 3 over a certain period of time. So I think that opportunity is there. We've also added several new products, which are category expanders. So I think that's also gaining traction. So that's on the laminate side, right? The wood veneer business, we've put in a certain capacity. We are not adding more capacity. The business does need more capital, as we know. So there again, I think now if I go one by one, door is a new concept. Production and factory installation on site. This really takes off a lot of carpentry load, time saving, etc., etc. Flooring, again, potentially a large market, but growing at a slow pace because the residential market did not grow well over the last few years. So we think there is space there. Veneer can only do so much. We don't expect the veneer business to scale up too much beyond a point. We'll keep giving us the margins. On the particle board, we said that in the orbit call when we announced the expansion. Right now there is no relevant producer or player. The market is about 5,000 crore in India. All smaller factories, poor production, poor product quality. The board quality is not good. Unavailability of particle board is leading to expansion of MDF market share. Companies like IKEA and so many other furniture producers still have 70-80% of their raw material as particle boards. So there, I think unorganized to organized, this whole work from home, carpentry happening off-site, assembly happening on-site, I think will clearly the online players, the e-com players, they mostly will use Greenlam particle boards as a product. So I think there we have a good space to go and expand our market. Plywood also, we've told 30,000 crore market approximately. Just 2 national players, and few regional players. Most regional players are either not focused or are very weak. So I think there's a space to create for a third national player eventually to come in, although we're starting a factory in South India. And unorganized to organized story is also panning out there. People, even the kitchen producers need good quality plywood, and good quality plywood is not available because even the larger players resort to a lot of outsourcing, which mostly restrains them from offering good quality product. Good kitchen producers have to import plywood because calibrated plywood is not available in abundance. So I think across our segments, demand situation, unorganized to organized, newer categories, replacement of imports in laminates, international market possibility. So really, I think with all these factors, available, we think we should be able to kind of continuously grow the business.
One last question was with sir, one last question was with respect to international. As you said, there is space and room. So, how do we, as in laminate, are placed in terms of cost? Are we, cost effective compared to other South Asian countries and Chinese? How are we placed in that?
So our export model is not based on cost leadership. Although we are cost effective, the model has been built or is being built on marketing, distribution, specification, brand recall, developing products for OEMs, value-added products. So our model of business is being built and has been built in that direction. So obviously, while we were building this, the model was slow, painful, high initial expenditures. So that's the model we have built and we are building on the international front. But to answer your question on cost leadership, we are cost effective vis-a-vis other manufacturers or South Asian players. But again, there's a difference. So if you play in the commodity space, sometimes the raw material specifications are not the same. So the kind of product we'll produce on a local factory in India will produce, or some other place might produce in China or somewhere. The specifications could be different. So then comparison of cost may not be relevant. But with the same specification, we clearly are cost efficient also.
Thank you very much, sir. Best of luck.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Rishabh Bothra from Anand Rathi. Please go ahead.
Just wanted to understand what's the demand side outlook coming from OEMs like real estate players, or how is it shaping up with dealers, respect to dealers, and how is it shaping up with respect to the new age, you can say urban ladder or Pepperfry or IKEA stores? So where is the mix exactly huge demand growth coming from, or is it from all sectors?
So very difficult to exactly tell you where the mix is coming from, but we think the demand is coming and will come from all the segments you mentioned about the trade residential, the residential OEMs, and the new age interior design or home fit out companies.
And do we have a ballpark figure for each of the verticals? Let's say if 1 million square feet of real estate is being developed, be it residential or commercial, what kind of product requirement would be for laminates or veneers or plywood, MDF, anything of that sort? Some ballpark benchmark?
I don't have that right now.
Okay. And lastly, sir, though it's something to do with the demerger processes, I guess Greenply was a single company which housed all the product segments, and in 2015 Greenlam was created, and in 2019 Green Panel was created with different key business verticals. Plyboard was left with Greenply, and laminate came into Greenlam, and MDF into Green Panel. But at this stage, 2022, I think more so everyone is moving in all businesses, rather to say, and will be competing with each other. So how things work at your end? Because I think cross-holding at promoter level is still there in all the companies. If you could throw some light, or can there be a merger going forward in 2-3 years down the line to have larger synergies at play?
So firstly, there is no cross-holding of promoters as far as Greenlam is concerned. I'm not too clear about Greenply and Green Panel.
Not cross-holding as such. I guess Saurabh sir is holding in Green Panel as well as I think in Greenlam.
No, I'm not. I'm Saurabh only, so I'm not.
Okay.
Right. So Greenlam holding is clear. There's no cross-holding with the family members of Greenply and Green Panel. The chairman holds, I think, about 2% in Greenlam. Otherwise, there's no cross-holding. It's all clean and clear. So Greenlam moved in the decorative market, which is the laminates space and the decorative veneer and allied space, right? And now, obviously, after 7-8 years, we think that with the surfacing materials, we also need to get into the subsect products, because dealers, customers, distributors, architects, IDs want more products. So if you look at our space, I can only talk of Greenlam right now. Our expansion from a competition or competitive product is only plywood at the moment, right? Particle boards, Greenply or Green Panel, both don't do. So really, the discussion is more of plywood, which is obviously a smaller investment. We have a decorative veneer business, which is aligned with the plywood dealers, and those customers who buy decorative veneers also need base ply or plywood to place the decorative veneer on, and that's the reason, in a way, also, we understand that business, and customers' channel is quite common. We're already into the decorative veneer business, and we're getting into the plywood business also. And clearly, from a competition point, we said that earlier, the market is so large, you just have 2 organized players in plywood and few regional players who are all, like 4 or 5 regional players with a band of 200, 250 crore. So there clearly is an opportunity, for 1 or 2 more players to enter the space, and gradually, build a business. I don't think that we'll end up taking share from anybody else. From the organized players, we'll end up creating our own market share, and probably take share from the unorganized players, but take the growth of the market.
Great, sir. Good to hear that.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next question. That is in the line of Nikhil Agarwal from VT Capital. Please go ahead.
Hello. Am I audible?
Yes, Nikhil, go ahead.
Hello. Yeah, just one question from me. So, So, like, what was the quantum of price hikes you have taken in Q3 and in Q4, if any?
So you will go ahead now?
Yeah. We have taken around 5 to 7% in the domestic market and around 5 to 6% in the export market, international market. In terms of Q4, there is no price hike as of now is planned, since as we mentioned at the beginning of the call, that with this we could able to recover our raw material price hike, cost for the raw material price hike was recovered. So as of now, there is no hike is planned for the Q4.
Okay, that's it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next question. That is on the line of Karan Patelia from Asian Market Securities. Please go ahead.
Hi, sir. Thank you for the opportunity. Sir, on the plywood side, so are we looking at, only going ahead with the premium end of plywood, or will also be manufacturing the big and the low end, or how is the strategy there?
So sorry, can you come again, please?
On the plywood side, are we only looking to manufacture the premium end of the plywood and go for outsourcing for the other two models, or we looking to manufacture all three under our factory?
So at the moment, because we're just setting up one plant and we're looking at not going out for outsourcing, and we're looking at self-manufactured plywood, which will be in the mid to premium, more, let's say mid premium to high premium in that space. So we're not looking at an outsourcing model currently.
Okay, that was helpful. Then, and on the particle board business, like peak revenues of 600 crores, what kind of working capital requirement, can we see? Because this business is more to do with the B2B side. If my understanding is correct on this sector.
Should will take it?
Yeah. Karan, not much of a working capital in this will be expected, because first the number of SKUs will not be that much high. Another will be the input component will not be of that much high as which is required in the existing set of businesses. So we believe that it will be significantly lower than our existing working capital requirement.
So correct to assume that.
I'll just add, Karan. We don't need to, in the particle business, it's a factory to customer model. Like in laminates, we have to have these 8, 9, 10 warehouses in India and abroad where we have to do redistribution. So there's inventory which we are carrying, in the company's distribution centers because of the high number of SKUs. So in particle board model, from factory you ship direct to the customers. So there is no transit inventory, or a storage space in between which is needed for redistribution.
All right. So as per that, much lower working capital needs compared to the existing business. Correct.
We believe both the new businesses, plywood and particle boards, should have lower working capital requirements versus the existing business. Having said that, the existing business also, we believe, will improve working capital days as volumes and numbers go up.
Got it. That was very helpful. So thank you. That's it from my end.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Kushal Kasliwal from Ideaton Capital. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hello for taking my question. Saurabh sir, this is a question to you. I just wanted to understand what is our vision for the plywood segment, since we are doing this in a separate listed company, Edge Industries. What do we think, like 3 to 5 years down the line? How do we want to do this? Because it's pretty known that what happened with green ply and green panels. So are we thinking to kind of do this entirely, all the plywood expansion in this subsidiary? This is the first question.
So is your question that will house a plywood business in HGIL or not? Is that the question, Kushal?
Yeah, the question is basically around the plywood segment which we are doing with HG.
Right.
We have a capex of around 125 crore. What do we think?
Right.
After we are done with this capex, do we want to do entire plywood in HG, or how does it work going forward?
So that's still open, and in fact today in the call somebody has also recommended that we should merge that with Greenlam Industries at some point. So that's something which we will think through more clearly, right? And so I don't have a very definitive response to you on that, but clearly we're starting with South India and we want to go one step at a time, and then we see how the business pans out, and then take necessary decisions.
Just a follow-up on this, I mean, do we expect this kind of TAM in the South Indian market? I understand it's a big market, but what is our expected, total addressable market in the South Indian market? Do we think, we can, capture this meaningfully and maybe a brownfield going forward in the Tamil Nadu plant?
You have to just come again on this. The voice is cracking in between, please. So you talked about the brownfield expansion in Tamil Nadu plant. Is that what you said?
Yes.
And what was your first question, please, Kushal?
Yeah, the first thing was just, will be able to, capture TAM in the plywood industry in South India through this plant?
So as you probably do understand, as I can see, the plywood model is by and large a regional model, and logistics costs are important in the plywood business. So is de-risking and diversifying your raw material base, right? So one plant in one part of the country eventually cannot service through the country. You will need, reasonable sized plants at a few locations in India eventually, right? So the current plan is to start with South India, as you see, and the rationale for that is South India is the largest market for branded plywood in the country, and minimum capacity of branded plywoods, at least for the moment, is in South India, right? So we think, so if you look at what the capacity we are planning and kind of revenues and the market opportunity, so I think South does represent and does offer that opportunity from a South India plant. Now, whether we'll end up selling the entire production in South or some more markets, that is something which I cannot say much at the moment. Yeah. And beyond this, the second part was, can we do a brownfield in this plant? We can't do a brownfield in this plant. I think we've planned the capacities in a manner that beyond this, beyond the capacity we're putting in, we will not be able to add much more capacity in this location. And rather, we don't want to also.
Okay, understood. Okay, sir. Just one last question on the debt repayment. I mean, as we all know.
Vishal, your voice is breaking up.
Is it better?
So it's still the same.
Yeah. Slightly better to me.
Yeah, I was just asking about the kind of debt we will take for this 125 crore capex in HG. Since we have mentioned 65-35 for debt equity, around 80 crore to debt would. How will this debt be served? I mean, will this directly go from Greenlam? Will this be going through HG, or are we taking a moratorium because HG will take around 1.5 cash flows to repay the debt, right?
Yeah. This debt will be taken directly in the HG, and we will have the moratorium for the initial period of from the bank in terms of that. So we believe that HG will be able to service the debt. However, should the need arises at that moment of time, then Greenlam will support.
Okay, so by Greenlam support, do you mean you will be infusing more equity in the company, or would this be kind of an unsecured loan? How does it work? Because
it will depend upon that time the scenario, whether it's needed for the short term period or whether it's needed for the longer term. So then probably that time the call can be taken in terms of this. But infusing equity will not be a possibility, since it's a listed company and we are already holding 75% of the equity.
Okay, just wanted to understand the rest, because we own only 6% of the company. Couldn't we have done this entirely in Greenlam, or were there any legal or
because the land is there in this company. It's because of the land this company was acquired and the project is being put up at that location.
Okay, so I presume land would have been acquired in a slum kind of scenario, but I presume to a timeline constant we would have done this. Am I right?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for answering my question, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, that was the last question. I now hand the conference over to the management for the closing comments.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your time and your questions. And if some of your queries have not been responded or have not been responded completely, or you couldn't get a chance to ask us, you can please reach out to us offline and we'll try and address them to the best of our ability. Thank you so much. Have a great evening ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Greenlam Industries Limited, that concludes this conference call. We thank you for joining us, and you may now disconnect your lines. Thank you.